Could God logically actualize a world in which he gives humans freedom, but they never do anything wrong? I don't think that's a world God can logically actualize. What does that mean? So, then we get into that conversation.
Unapologetic from Premier Unbelievable.
Well, I'm joined again on today's show by Mary Jo Sharp, who is an assistant professor of apologetics at Houston Baptist University and founder of the Confident Christianity Apologetics Ministry. Darkroom Faith is the name of a new resource that Mary Jo is one of the creators of. And it's really a website full of videos, stories, conversations, great sort of resource for youth groups, student ministries, and I can imagine a lot of adults who would benefit from it as well, to be honest, because these are really well-produced videos on all kinds of themes that frequently pose questions and objections, especially to young people. And we're going to be talking about one of the videos, which is on the issue of suffering, which obviously is an issue that everyone grapples with at some point in their life. Mary, starting again on a personal level, has this been a kind of significant objection for you that you've had to kind of work through in your own life?
Yeah, definitely. In two different ways. I have the first way is that I have a very strong sense of morality, and even as an atheist. And so it was hard for me to justify that in a universe void of good and evil or any, objective basis for that. So this has been a search for myself in coming to Christianity and coming back around to belief after I doubted what I believed. So that's one part of it. And then the other part was the hurt, the painful experiences of being in the church myself. So that part of it, I sort of naively expected coming into Christianity to find people who were all like the best at searching for the good, true, and beautiful God. And they would be conforming their lives to Christ-likeness and the first people to admit that they're wrong. I'm an idealist. And so there was a lot of naivety on my part, and that combined with the vices of people in the church, it's sort of like the perfect storm. There was pain, a lot of pain from that, and hurt at the hands of Christians. So dealing with my own suffering in the church has been part of my journey. Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll come back to that towards the end of our conversation. Tell us about this particular story. I'll give the sort of the précis that is given on the website itself. This is episode 7. Max Wants to End It All, it's titled. For years, Max has bottled up his pain, angry at God for allowing him to suffer childhood abuse. But one day, a friend gives Max a gift, and it transforms the way he sees his suffering and the world. Why don't we just hear a little bit of this video now, and then we'll talk about it.
I feel it every day. A pain deep inside. Just won't go away. I don't know if you can see it, but inside I'm suffering. God, why do I feel this way? I don't have anyone that understands. If you love me, why do I feel this pain all the time?
So there you go. It's just another snippet just to whet your appetite of the video episode that is about the issue of suffering. Do you want to sort of talk us through a little bit of the story, because each of these, as we call them, narratives or vignettes sort of are based around a particular individual and their particular struggle. So what's the kind of the basics of the story in this case, Mary Jo?
Yeah, so the title gives it away. Max Wants to End It All. We have a main character who his abuse happened when he was still a baby in the womb. And so he was very vulnerable. And that led him to have some disability in his life for which he gets made fun of and bullied. And so he gets to a point where he doesn't understand what he's, what is the meaning of his life? Why is he here? Does he matter? And he feels that it would be better if he had never existed. So he wants to just to end it. And Max has sort of an epiphany moment of, like you said, I'm trying not to give it all away, but he sort of has an epiphany moment that his life does matter. And that it sort of comes through him understanding that he has things he can add, he has value, and he can add to the community of human beings in a valuable way. That his life isn't wasted or meaningless, that it has purpose, and he can show redemptive love to others, even though he did not have that shown to him. So it's a very difficult episode, I would say. And I would prepare yourself and also prepare your student ministry that we're going to work through a difficult episode. But I think it's so important to do that because we need to talk about the pain and suffering of mankind and the problem of evil.
I mean, it's often said, and if any preacher wants to connect at a very deep level with people in their congregation, you can simply talk about suffering, because everyone has their own story, don't they? And it might be different to Max's, but certainly everyone will have, has something, some kind of injustice in their life, something where they've had to work through something that they've gone through. And to that extent, I can imagine this is the kind of episode where, yes, it's going to stir up a lot of kind of potential feelings and emotions in a lot of people. It's not just an intellectual issue in that sense. It's very much something that touches people at a deep level, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And we try to balance that in the episode. We try to offer some resource as far as an answer, but we also acknowledge that it's not going to make everything better, that it doesn't just make all the hurt and pain go away, just because we can provide, maybe this is why there's evil in the world. And so we're very cautious to not wrap it up real tidy and neatly.
Absolutely. I mean, when you're in that situation, maybe you're working through issues that people have, and sometimes it takes a while, I think, in conversations or in ministry to sometimes get down to the real issues when it comes to the issue of pain and suffering, because it's often presented as an intellectual issue, but very often I think it goes alongside often people's own personal experiences of pain and suffering or rejection or whatever it might be. And to that extent, what do you find is a helpful way into these kinds of conversations when you're maybe starting to broach this subject with someone who says, well, this is the reason I don't believe. Why would a good God allow such and such? Where do you tend to begin with that kind of conversation, Mary Jo?
Yeah, it's always different with each person who talks to me. Some people are grieving, lamenting life experiences. And so I'm there to listen and be more of a counselor, be a person who is okay with where they're at. So that's an important part of this. The other times, I'll get that, but I might also get, they're looking for answers. And so I sort of probe, well, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a response? Are you looking for answers? And if they say yes, then I can start asking them some questions about their view of why there's evil in the world, why they're asking the question they're asking. Are they angry with God? There's some things that I can, it comes down to asking questions, a lot of questions about where they're at and why they're asking that. And when I get permission, I can go into more of an explanation. So I will say something like, well, do you need answers or do you need a hug? And I've had people say both. I'll take a little bit of each. And in that case, I can say, well, here's what I think. Here's what I believe about the situation. And I can talk a little bit. Maybe I offer them a little bit of a free will defense. Maybe I offer them a little bit of the creation story about how there's evil in the world and why it's here. Something like that. I try not to go too far until I see where they're at. But yeah, I'll offer them a little bit about my belief if I'm given that sort of permission. Yeah, that's okay. That's what I need. And I've found that it's received very well. They don't always agree with me, but they'll receive it well when you step in there in a gentle and charitable manner.
When it comes to, I suppose, the most obvious question, really, if someone simply said, I'm suffering, I have, perhaps it's some kind of a physical issue that they've been suffering with all their life, and they say, you believe in a God who could heal someone, a God who does heal people, and a God who can do anything in principle. I've prayed, I've asked, why isn't it happening to me? I mean, again, everybody's different, and there's going to, the answer might vary, obviously, depending on the individual standing in front of you. But in general terms, where would you begin with someone who's maybe coming with that kind of a problem or a question about God?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'm going to tell them is I don't know why you personally are suffering. I don't have access to that kind of knowledge. And I think that's important to tell people, because a lot of times Christians come off like, we'll just download some theodicy on them or some philosophical problem of evil as if we understand why that individual is suffering. So I want to make sure they know first, since we're talking about beginnings here, that I don't know why they're suffering. I don't have that answer, and I won't have access to understand that. So I'll let them know that, but then I say, I do have some theories about, could God logically actualize a world in which he gives humans freedom, but they never do anything wrong? I don't think that's a world God can logically actualize. What does that mean? So, then we get into that conversation. So I'll say things like that, but, and people want to engage that because that's not something that comes out of their high school education, or a lot of times they haven't encountered any of these arguments in their college education. So these are new conversations to them. All they've heard are these sort of sound bites like, well, why didn't God make a world where there is no evil? They don't think, well, can he do that? Is that something God can logically actualize without getting into absurdities, right? And so those are, presenting those kinds of situations to people help them to think, wow, I've never encountered that idea before. Maybe it is true that our freedom, which gives us real choice to really love whomever we want, to truly and freely love people, including the eternal God of the universe, maybe that is something that, is in place so that we have that opportunity. But the downside, the bad side, or the evil side of that, if you Star Wars fans will forgive me, the dark side of that is that there is opportunity there as well to hate and to do great harm from that gift of freedom.
Yeah. It is always harder. And that's often where I would go with someone, especially when it comes to injustices people have suffered. It is, the problem is if God simply made everyone do the right thing, we would obviously live in a world where there wasn't free will and we were all just puppets, and no one could freely give or receive love and all the rest of it. But I think it is that bit harder, isn't it, when it comes to the problem of natural evil and why disease and natural disasters befall people and that kind of thing. Where do you go with that kind of that sort of a problem where it's not so easy necessarily to point to the freedom that people exert as the source of the kind of where the evil might come from?
Yeah, there are so many responses to this one. Well, it could be that natural evil is not definitionally a thing, because evil is defined, it's a moral issue, and that has to go with a will. So is a hurricane evil? Is it naturally evil? Well, that's a tough one definitionally, because I don't know that it can be naturally evil. It's something that happens in our world, and we can take measures to protect people. So we can build structures that are better protected from that, or we cannot build in areas where people experience those things. So that's one. Another one is that the freedom of people to make these choices to do evil is actually interacting with the physical. That's another theory on this, in that, the whole earth is groaning in anticipation of the release from its bondage, right, to our evil. So we get that out of the Bible, that we are sort of the cause of all this. And you see that, the immaterial interacting with material, and as far as like our anxiety and stress and, our emotions can actually end up killing us, harming us, taking our physical life from us. So there is some kind of interaction. So those are two of the thoughts that you can go on there. Maybe it's not something that is, we can definitionally say is evil, but then again, maybe it is because of the great evil that this world is the way it is. There's another one, which is like the soul building theodicy. So many. You asked a professor and this is what happens. So some people think God has put dangers into this world in order to develop human virtue. So that's not one that I tend to go with, but if you're interested in looking at that, soul building theodicies are out there as well.
Yes. I mean, I suppose in a related way, people often point to the fact that actually often people are drawn to God rather than pushed away from God because of certain circumstances in their life that may be painful. And to that extent, as C.S. Lewis said, God uses pain as a megaphone to rouse a deaf world. There's a sense in which when we have a life that is incredibly comfortable, in a sense, it's easy to forget God. I don't know if that's a kind of an argument you would use, that there's a sort of a way in which, while God doesn't necessarily cause the suffering, he can nevertheless use it to bring people to a knowledge of himself. Yeah,
that one's a tough one. It works for, I don't even know how to frame this. It's not lighter instances of evil. I don't want to say that, but when you get into horrific acts of evil, it's harder to use that one. Like in my course, at the university, we study some of the most horrific instances of evil. And yeah, it doesn't seem to like balance out there.
Yeah.
It seems to be more problematic at that point. So that's been one of the greatest objections to that sort of thinking. But yeah, he can, as you said, he doesn't cause it, but he can use it and make something from it so that it's not meaningless. Right. And that's one of the things that we are concerned with is our pain and suffering meaningless? And so I'm going to kind of drive it back to our episode here on suffering for Darkroom, is that what our character realizes is that it's not meaningless, that from his pain, he can provide beauty and love towards other people. And like I said earlier, he's very redemptive in how he treats others as he finds his way, because he realizes that that's what he should be doing.
Which ultimately, I suppose, is a picture of Christ, who obviously suffered pain, suffering, humiliation, injustice, but was able to turn it in a redemptive way to, so I guess that's the central picture at the heart of Christianity in many ways.
Yeah, very much so. And that's one thing that cannot be left out of the conversation. Sometimes, I'll get into philosophy of the problem of evil, but ultimately, and I get into things like, well, what are you even calling evil if there's no standard of good by which you're saying something's evil? So I can go there, but ultimately at the end, you're looking at a God who suffered and died on the cross. And then sort of Alvin Plantinga response, like a world with incarnation and atonement is greater, is a greater world. So there's a God who suffers with us and doesn't distance himself from us. He's not the deistic God who's just sort of a watcher in the background.
And you fitted this all into a 15-minute video, or not quite?
8. It's like an 8-minute, 8 or 10. We did. We put it all in this short video. No, I mean, it's more about the opening up the conversation. You and I have gone very, very deep, and I don't want to scare anybody off. The video does not go that deep. It is more about the character's engagement with it. And we just very lightly introduce responses to the problem of evil.
Well, as I say, these are very much, I think, meant to be conversation starters. And I guess the individual group or leader will know kind of where to kind of press the issues and where to open up these conversations, hopefully. And I'm sure that the resources that accompany it help them to do that as well. But yeah, thank you very much for talking through this. It's not an easy subject, but I think you've done it in a really great way with this new video. So if you want to go and check that one out, it's one of the episodes at darkroomfaith.com, and you can see all of them there, as well as the resources that are available to help you lead study groups with this material. But for now, thank you very much, Mary Jo, for joining me again on this week's edition of the show.
Thank you for having me.
Unapologetic from Premier Unbelievable. For more shows, resources, and our newsletter, visit premierunbelievable.com.